Well, I'd like to begin, first of all, by congratulating Sarmad Khoosat and his team for producing a technically competent, extremely well-acted film on Saadat Hasan Manto. I think in the context of the re-emergence of Pakistani cinema, this is a great achievement on his part and, of course, on the part of his team. And I think that in the context of this festival, I think it's a particularly important event to have Manto being shown to a larger audience outside Pakistan. And for that, I want to thank the organizers for making this possible and for asking me and giving me an opportunity to engage with Sarmad Khoosat. Now, this film is about Saadat Hasan Manto. So it is not just about cinema. It's about a man who existed in history, a man that we all have enjoyed reading and have really come to respect as we've got to know more and more of his work. I wrote a book, as has been mentioned, The Pity of Partition, Manto's life, works, times and works across the Indo-Pakistan divide. And in that, I had talked about the ways in which fiction can embellish the historical narrative. But what I want to ask Sarmad is when, if there's a danger, whether he feels that there's a danger when fiction can stand in for history. And I here want to begin with your disclaimer. Is it a formulaic disclaimer when you say that this is a work of fiction based on the life of a historic figure, Saadat Hasan Manto, for which we've been given license by the family, the heirs? So I want to begin with that. Is that a formulaic sort of a disclaimer, or do you really mean it?
Again, with cinema, a lot of course, legal stuff and a lot of legalities are associated when you also intend to share it beyond just your own region. So yeah, so it's a very official disclaimer, to be honest, to begin with. But then again, it is a disclaimer about the fact that the connection that we're trying to find with Saadat Hasan Manto is of a very emotional nature.
Okay, an emotional nature. But let me sort of explain this better. I mean, when your fictional imagination takes us to his nephew, my brother, Shahid Taku, his sort of, fantasy to have Noor Jahan come to his birthday, it never happened, of course. I have no problem with that. I also don't mind seeing my dear father bearded. He never wore a beard all his life. I don't even mind that. That's poetic license. That's the artistic license I'm prepared to give. But where I think I draw a line as a historian fundamentally, because this film is being advertised as a biopic, not as a fictional film. This is a biopic on Manto. And so Manto we begin the film with a heart-wrenching scene of Manto being subjected to electric shock, something that never happened historically. Okay. Number two, we see Manto drinking before writing some of his great short stories like Hattak. We know that Manto never wrote under the influence, and if he did, he wrote poorly stories that we will never, ever remember. So that I want to point out. Right. Number three, you show perhaps most egregiously, we have to sort of start on this, most egregiously, his wife, my khala, Safia Manto, receiving money from a prostitute for his medical expenses. Now, all of these are fictionalized, but I don't know whether your audiences, not just here, but in the world, will start talking to us about this as history. Right. And I think that danger I would like you to talk about.
Right. Okay, first of all, I think with films, they definitely become more accessible. They are more easily transportable. It's based on a theater play that Shahid Mahmood Nadeem has already penned, that has traveled all the way to India also, and it has been showcased in Pakistan. So a lot of research and the fictional license to begin with. I'm not disclaiming that as a director, yes, of course, you have to take the responsibility. But Shahid Mahmood Nadeem penned the screenplay for the film. And with the play, for theater, there weren't any objections, and a lot of things were just, kind of just incorporated into it to round off the story, or to, again, to somehow draw an empathy from the audiences, particularly back home, where we have censored him, we have dissociated ourselves, our conscience with him. His works have been tucked under the rug for a long, long time. So I'm just saying, so of course, a lot of it does get warped, but here, I think the dramatic licenses are taken by the screenplay writer, Shahid Mahmood.
No, certainly. I mean, I'm not sort of trying to sort of apportion blame here. There's not a question of blame. My point is that what is this film meant to be? Is this meant to be a fictionalization of Saad Hasan Manto's life, or is this meant to be a biopic of Saad Hasan Manto?
So, with the title biopic, I'll also have a confession there that when films are made, films are animals beyond just anybody's singular control. So it has been publicized as a biopic, whereas that is why the disclaimer comes so bold in the beginning, and that's me writing it, that it's not a biopic. It's a film which does take fictional license, and that is what it states very boldly and blatantly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let me also sort of say that there is a lot more to Manto than asylum, addiction, and alcoholism. I mean, eventually that kills him. Now, because this is part of a serial, and you've taken it out of a serial, you've gone for the darkest period of his life. And there, too, I feel that you've not adequately contextualized either partition. And I want to tell you this as a filmmaker, that you've used repeatedly 1942 footage, the Quit India movement, as 1947 footage. So I really do think you need to take that into account.
I mean, only available footage, I must say.
No, there's plenty of footage.
No, because with the copyrights. This was the only footage.
I'm sorry about that, but it's so obvious for a historian. It's just glaring for me. I mean, it's not 47. It's the Quit India movement that they're thrashing the people. It's the police thrashing.
Hence the choppiness to the edit, and hence because that was the only footage we could acquire the rights for.
All right. Now, going back to the question of why you chose to concentrate on Manto's, the ending years of his life. Why didn't you really try to bring some sort of a balance between his earlier life, his life, for instance, when he first goes to Bombay, then he goes to All India Radio, then he goes back to Bombay. I just wondered why. I mean, there is drama, a bit of melodrama, I think, towards the end of because you focused on that. But why did you choose this and not something else?
You see, again, I think with Manto Saab's life, it's no one film could really suffice the entirety, or it could not embody the kind of the dynamics that he actually had about not only his writing career but about his life also. And I think that partition is something that has been warped to a degree that it has been distorted for most of us. And for me, when I think of partition, I think Toba Tek Singh and Kholdo, and then for that matter, when I read Thanda Gosht, it really gives a counter narrative. And I thought it was way more important to emphasize on that in the film version, where it really brings the whole text that has been taught to us in the 80s and the 90s to another light. And so the serial definitely offers more than that. Serial has some of the Bombay impressions also. But in the film, I really felt that I wanted an emotional connection for the audience to build. And back home, just to be able to actually present the counter narrative to the textbooks that are taught was more important to me.
I'm not so sure that if that was your objective, I think that's opening up a totally different line of discussion.
Okay.
Because if you're telling me that this film is intended to correct Pakistani history, it's not going to correct Pakistani history.
It's not about correction. It's just an other angle.
But I think you wanted your audience to engage with Manto, and I think you've done a very good job. But what I found lacking, because you've emphasized the later part of his life, which is very tragic, which is, he's very ill, is that his humor. I mean, his sardonic humor, which sort of electrified people all, I mean, his stories, I mean, that's somehow not there adequately, I feel.
It's there, though. I mean, adequately, yes, definitely. Adequacy is something. It's there, you know. I think
well, you show him instead as an angry man, as a very angry man, but you don't show the fact that, and you try to show what is very nicely done, the three girls between Nuzi, Nuchi, Nuzi, that is all right. I think the Sania Saeed is excellent. You, of course, are brilliant at times, but a little overacted at others. You are, I have to be honest with you, a little overacted at others. It's too melodramatic for me, it's too stylized at times. But having said all that, I do think that one of the most memorable and delightful parts of the film is Noor Jahan. And Sabah Qamar is excellent. I thought that was woven in very nicely. So I'd also want to tell you that I enjoyed the way you did the short stories. I think that's brilliantly done. But why did you have to fictionalize Manto's fiction?
Again, censors. I would say censors, just to get away with the project titled Manto in Pakistan. I don't know how many of you can really relate to the fact, but it's next to impossible. Like a channel bringing up Manto as a prospective project for me was like, you know, I was jumping with joy. And it's not just the censorship that they impose, but the censorship that people like me grew on. So for that, yes. And again, a short story or a piece of literature or fiction, when you read it, is a completely different experience. When you translate it on screen, definitely it does have that interpretation angle. You know, so a lot of it is, yes, heavily interpreted, and it's not just the senses that are prevalent, senses that I think I grew under.
My last question before I open it to a very attentive audience, and that relates to your effort to bring Manto on the screen. Now, was the objective primarily to bring it to Pakistani audiences, South Asian audiences, or were you really interested in bringing Manto to the international audience?
To be perfectly blunt and honest, the idea was to do a project on TV and then to actually open it to an audience in Pakistan alone to begin with, because we have disowned him for way too long. You know, internationally, yes, you know, academically, we have interpreted him, we've accepted him, we have researched well on him, but we have to realize that there is still a taboo. There's still that cliched taboo about it, which in itself has become a cliche now.
And there you do very well by bringing to the screen discussions of sexuality, which is unheard of. I think that is a very bold, new direction for Pakistani cinema. So that is extremely wise and well done. But do you want to sort of comment on how you really are trying to do that? I mean, you were trying to sort of get things that are not discussed, because if you bring Manto, these are things that are not discussed.
Okay, I'll tell you. So, for example, Toba Take Singh, it's a story which is epic, which is like a story worthy of becoming a full feature length on its own. So is Koldo, so is Thanda Gosht, I don't know. But just getting away with that on Pakistani television and Pakistani cinema, trust me, is like a big deal. And an overlapping montage of the two national anthems was something that I mean, that in itself just is nothing short of miraculous. Trust me, with the censors.
Well, I mean, yes, certainly.
I mean, the censors exactly say that you cannot show the Indian flag on screen. But they say you cannot play the Indian anthem on radio or television. So I'm just saying, of course, it's a lot of creative and dramatic license, but the idea was to really just try and give another narrative.
Certainly. My question really related to the international dimension of taking the film out, and I really feel that opportunity was there, potentially there. But what I find instead is that this film has been made by a Manto lover for Manto lovers. If you don't know about Manto, you will miss most of the film. And there I really feel that the context, maybe that will come in the serial, because there are just too many things. I'll give you an example. You bring in the American Consul General. There's nothing on his what I think, the most brilliant part of his work are the letters to Manto. So that's just not there in the film, but I'm sure it'll be there in the serial. So I mean, so I think there. Could you tell us a little bit more the struggle you had taking this film out of the serial?
You see, again, when you have, say, a film script and you shoot it, it's like a very linear journey. But when you have a 900-minute long footage and you simmer it down to a film, and you do not want just a distilled version, you actually want like a version which can stand on its own, whatever legs it has. There, I had to, yes, keep the local audience more in mind, because you see, the moment you blatantly tell them that now we are using essay and short story, for example. A short story is definitely something that is they can be lured with. An essay is a little difficult for them to digest. So that's, I think, it was on a lot of levels very physical choices. Like the physiology of the film or the teleserial had a lot to offer, but then there was content that needed to be just put in to kind of bind it. So yeah, I would say, and again, with Manto Saab or anybody else, for example, I don't know how many people would be happy with technically like an acclaimed or like a technically solid biopic on Capote or Hitchcock or anyone, It never kind of suffices what an audience or a reader would feel about
Not 100%, but the degrees.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, so with that, the degree has been quite high with a lot of people.
Well, I mean, yes, but you are really talking to Pakistani audiences, and there I want to make a comment about the resurgence of Pakistani cinema. I mean, Pakistanis are going to be making cinema just for Pakistanis, or I mean, there is a talk about an international reach, and that's an opportunity that you.
This is, you see, the problem again being that it's an industry which was there initially, then it was really like thrown into the ditches, and then it got up, it woke up, and we are hardly like 3 years old so far.
Sarmad, the reason the film industry died was because of shifting market realities. I mean, with the loss of East Pakistan, your market shrank enormously.
Initially, yes.
And so a series of other things that took place. But the idea is to when you make films, is to look for markets, but to confine it really. I mean, in that sense, I really wonder whether there isn't another film with you playing Manto for an international audience.
No, to be honest, again, you see, with us making films right now is a real struggle. It's a swim against the stream. Trust me, like somebody willing to just put money in a project but do not care for what the revenue returns are going to be. So I think there will definitely come a time when, we will look at bigger markets, but internationally, it's not like, a handmade scarf back home. A film is way more tedious to export and import, Even if we talk about a foreign market, that cannot be just a limited diaspora, because then the international distribution and the rights and everything comes in. So yes, it's a journey, but I think people have started off on that road, and there will come a time when, I think more international concerns would be entertained.
So the reach, it's not international concerns. The concerns can be Pakistani, but the idea is for Pakistanis to reach international.
I was talking market-wise, that, when we talk about an international market, the circuit, as we call it. So, yeah, I mean, that time would arrive.
Well, on that very positive note, I'd like to open it up to the audience.
Yes.
If you could just introduce yourself, please, who you are, identify yourself.
So my name is Athar Usmani, and I'm not a big fan of, or never have been, of Urdu literature. So my comment has to do with Ms. Jalal. Your assertion that this film will only appeal to Manto aficionados is completely wrong. Not cognizant of Manto's work. It involved me from the get-go. I think it does present Manto in a sardonic, dark light. There was plenty of sardonic humor that I saw. And it deals with some really difficult topics in a skillful, subtle fashion, as subtle as they can be made for an audience in Pakistan. and as well as international audiences. So all kudos to you. My critique has to do with your overacting more than anything. A little too much peanut butter on my toast, but that's me.
I would, again, I don't know if that has to be answered, but yes. But that's one of the drawbacks when you're directing yourself. You just get overboard.
Is it because you're directing yourself, or is it because you're still in a particular formula in Pakistan?
To a large degree, no. You see, because the formula you can redefine. With the project like Manto, to be honest, when you've already decided that it's not your mainstream work, so you can experiment more. But again, I think when you are completely driven by emotion, you do go to zones where you shouldn't.
Hi, it's a very interesting film. I enjoyed it. My name is Neela Sahil. I'm a PhD student at Professor Jalal. I had a quick question about the characterization of Manto's Humsafar.
Right.
The fact that it's a woman and his source of creativity, his creative impulse, but at the same time, his source of his madness, his hysteria. So how would you explain your choice for characterizing it as a woman and I just think of hysteria and hysteria.
Okay, again, I don't know if Shahid Saab's name would come in handy only, but that's, again, I would want to call it his genius, in the sense that, for a society like Pakistan, which really thrives on its own misogyny and its own kind of chauvinism, they just for the yin-yang thing to be kind of just brought into a script, I just thought it was definitely like his thing, his take on it, and I was really thrilled to execute that the way he wrote it. Yeah, so, and that's what I think I would say about that. Yes?
My name is Irfan, and I just wanted to ask you what is going on with Saad's daughter. What are they doing? Are they still alive? Are they more?
I would really want to talk to Jalal.
I think he didn't know who I was, so I mean, since he's really not.
I just wanted to bring it to Mr. Jalal as well. I really enjoyed this movie, and I was in awe of the director and actors and everything. But you kind of put a bad taste in my mouth on the question.
Look, I really think that you're all entitled to your perspectives on a film. The whole idea of a film is reviewership. This is not about a democracy.
No.
This is about your personal views. I was invited here as a historian, somebody who has worked on Manto, and I do think that Manto is not just something that has to be dramatized and fictionalized, but also be considered as a historic figure who existed, who produced work. So I think that's what the conversation is about. I mean, you can't. I have certainly liked aspects of the film, but I have questioned other aspects of the film. That is what a dialogue is about. It's not about simply applauding everything.
Right, cool. And that's why. No, and I appreciate that. And again, I'm not trying to really draw a comparison, but that's why you see historians and filmmakers are different people. Yes. Because again, okay, just a footnote to the thing. Of course, accuracy is something that one needs to keep in mind, and you cannot just get away with it by giving a disclaimer only. But I've seen historically accurate stuff, but it fails to draw any connection sometimes. And I really thought that, again, not only interpretation, but with texts also. I have grown up reading Manto on various levels, where, in the 8th grade, I really read the story titled Namrud Ki Khudai for all the wrong reasons. For all the wrong reasons in the world. When I read Thanda Gosht for the first time, I did feel what I was not supposed to feel reading that, So I'm just saying, so that again, that connection, of course, for me, is not entirely, again, about accuracy. And I really thought that, I took all the licenses that I could on a very emotional level, So yeah.
Mr. Khoosat, can I just ask you?
Yes, please.
So I really have to congratulate you and your team.
Thank you, sir.
You've done a phenomenal job. I think it's a great work. It's a great first step, towards
Thank you.
enhance Pakistani movie making. But one comment I wanted to make, though, is that I think you really
the team did a great job in depicting Manto as a man full of contradictions himself. Just like the society that he was predicting, that he was portraying, full of contradictions. I think that really showed in the man himself. And I think that's a very realistic presentation for any author, any writer, any national, any national figure. That's somebody who, who talks about contradictions in society, and yet he's full of those as well. Right. Which is entirely accurate, appropriate, and I think we should all, understand that and appreciate that. So that's
Thank you. And no, and again, I really just do not want to talk about like great achievements with it back home. But in a society like Pakistan, where censors and a lot of other things come into play, so it is generally about whitewashing people. Other than accuracy, we really believe in either like completely demonizing them or glorifying them to a degree where they are nothing short of celestial, entities, deities. So there, I think the flaws were very important to me. The inherent whatever complexes or the fears, or as I interpreted them as, the inside of his head was very important to me, which produced work which was gritty, which was at times scary, which was offensive also, So again, so his complexities are there, and thank you for really. Yeah. And if subcontinent can really accept a screen hero like Dev Das, who is a loser and a half, so definitely, yes, I would really want my heroes or my hero to have not just the power and the strengths, but also the weaknesses of a mortal soul.
Hi, my name is Todd. I'm from WPI. I'm senior right now.
Hi, sir.
And my question is that, so I didn't know about Manto much before the movie, and once I heard it, then I looked into it.
Right.
But my thing is that I watched the movie as more like something that deals with a lot of issues. And my question is there something that you kept in mind while you directed the entire movie, that there's this specific issue that you want to show the Pakistani people or even other people? That something, because it deals with mental health, sexuality,
right.
So is there something one thing that you wanted to focus on, or was it?
I really wish it was as easy as really drawing a moral of the story out of it, or just to have a singular agenda when it comes to that. But again, I think quite inadvertently, I think I really wanted to draw out that emotion where I wanted my audiences to feel a sense of loss, that and not only about Manto, but about how we really do believe in pulling our people generally, not only heroes as people, down. And I think that because the film does border on melancholy and melodrama towards the end, but I think that is also a reason why it did manage to draw in another kind of audience, which we generally say, okay, they are not meant for intelligent or intellectual stuff. They came in and they just made that weird connection with it, where they said, oh, we really feel for whatever his tragedy was. And he left us with something that we should have owned up.
First of all, I really want to thank you for making it. It was amazing. And I was sitting next to a lot of guys from Bollywood, and I was telling him where they went see, he can make good movies. So my question is, you've been directing plays for long.
Right.
And I don't remember, maybe you've done acting in plays too, but how come you thought of directing a movie and then acting in that movie too? Why that courage, where that courage came from?
Okay, again. It was initially a TV project, a purely TV project. And about casting, again, when you tell an actor that here is a genius who writes, he suffers from this trauma, this tragedy, that was the partition, he's scarred by it. Then he has moments where he's extremely angry about whatever he's dealing with. Then also, allegedly so, whatever mental things he's going through. These can really border on being interpreted as a very, they could have been a very cliched approach where, you just think of this person who is really dynamic, but at the same time, you would want like a linear approach to him. And that is what I did not want about Manto. I wanted him to be as disjointed as it comes across here because, well, he's a genius, but then, yes, he's an affectionate father also. The accounts that the daughters told me about Manto Saab were really endearing and like really unlike what a popular belief would want to reiterate, So I thought this either approached with an internal connection would work, or otherwise it would really become like 10 different characters who just do not kind of gel together. So it was a selfish decision, to be honest. I thought, okay, my Manto, I want to portray it. But other than that, since it was not earlier a film, and I think I'm glad I was not aware of that, so it helped me kind of, approach it with a certain fearlessness, because I was not thinking money, I was not thinking about the producers putting a lot at stake, and so yeah, it's been very organic. It's been very kind of strange in a lot of ways. This is a film which heavily banks on post-production, to be honest. Where I took a year and a half to kind of do my jigsaw on the footage that I had and come up with something that was still coherent and yet like not TV-like. I guess I've partly like covered that. Yes.
Hi, so I'm Asad Ahmed and organizer of this event.
Right.
I have a very simple question, and it's for both of you. And that is, can you speak to us a little bit about the importance of Manto today to contemporary Pakistan? Because you made this movie at this particular moment, historic moment in time. So how does it speak to us now? And that's for both for Professor Jalal and for you. And not to say so much about your emotional attachment to Manto, but to how it speaks to more broadly to issues of contemporary Pakistan.
Again, sir, with Pakistani audience, it was a lot about really giving them a taste of what they do not feel too comfortable with, the kind of content that we would categorize as marginal. So there, I don't know, I mean, not only Manto, but again, he has to be presented in some form. I mean, his literature exists in all sorts of translations and in its entirety, and it can be approached with whatever level of interest you have. But I would essentially talk about what the film has done as per some facts and statistics, It has reached out to an audience which probably does not know what to do with this content. They do not know how to connect with partition, They aren't the generation that suffered that loss. I mean, I didn't suffer the 1971 divide, but I know that, there was still the shock waves coming from that, and I grew up when, I could feel my parents still reliving that in a lot of instances. So I don't know, there's this sense of ownership that I want them to kind of reclaim. I want them to, and they have to a large degree, like understood that there is a legacy, even if you do not like approach it with a lot of ease, or if you cannot really reach out to it with a your own comfort thing happening. So I think it has that disheveling thing happening. It has that discomforting thing happening about it, the way people are responding to it. But I think that just to have another narrative which is not the one which is forced down our systems through our textbooks and all, but also to just own that legacy and that treasure. And in a lot of ways, the language that they have distanced themselves from. So I think that's what so far the feedback and the response has been. This new audience has gone to the theaters and watched it, and that has been quite heartwarming.
Well, I think Manto's relevance lies first and foremost in the fact that he addressed themes that remain relevant to our times, whether it's prostitution, whether it's hypocrisy, And I think those are the issues that matter. He also represents a way of thinking, questioning mind, instead of accepting unthinkingly. Manto was someone who questioned, and he opened up ways of thinking. He made you think differently and see the multiple meanings that lay within what we interpreted rather in a two-dimensional way. So I think the man's mind, his method, the way he thought is relevant for us. I appreciate what Sarmad says, that he wanted to at least destabilize the national narratives of Pakistan surrounding partition, I suppose, and many other things, and there are many, many other things. But when you say, what is it about Manto? Why will Manto always be relevant? It's precisely because of the way he thinks. Why is he relevant in India at a time when many things are closing in, when there's a sense that there is now, another kind of struggle they have to. Manto has become popular. There is debate now going on how he represented partition violence, and in a variety of ways, Indo-Pak relations. So I think that when everything becomes really stabilized, as often happens in history, between two countries that are rivals forever, I think Manto really helps you decenter those certitudes. And I think that's why he will always be relevant, in my view, given the fact that India, Pakistan don't look like they're going to be solving their problems very quickly.
Right here, I guess I have the mic, so I'll go first. This is Zach, I'm from Rhode Island. Just have a quick question. Great job. I was totally lost in the movie. I was trying to figure out, okay, what is this all about? I don't know much about Manto, so great job. You mentioned something about the financing and the shortcomings in the film industry in Pakistan. Tell me a little bit more about it. I think as far as technology is concerned, it's pretty cheap now to produce movies. So you mentioned something about censorship.
Right.
Are we still facing these dilemmas in Pakistan?
We are.
We can't discuss these issues?
We are. I don't know. I mean, logic-tied compartments is what we believe in. So we really want to segregate stuff that can just stay in its own whatever airproof, its own temperature-proof thing. Censorship, yes, but you see again, it's not just the censorship that's per the charter that they have, but then there's censorship of all kinds, and not only beginning with academic texts and syllabi, but overall, I'm sure you're aware of all kind of news is reaching you, but you see, in the name of expression, or in the name of entertainment, a lot is relaxed, and you'll see things, and you'll probably think that, oh, well, this is not really a very kind of, a conservative society, and they're really showing stuff that, we didn't expect this country to really display. But then whenever you have any hint of religion, conformity, and other things, so it does kind of, touch the wrong chords at times. And so censor is very, very tricky, to be honest. Very, very tricky. And in terms of financing, again, it's not just the camera. You see, digital technology has definitely made it more accessible for a whole new wave of filmmakers and storytellers who are in the business now. But then it's not just about making a film on a camera. It involves cost, and it involves production. It involves a whole design. And then it involves transporting and exchanging it, with people. So that does complicate it. And we're still talking about a country where, we have serious poverty issues. An average film will not cost you anything less than about from 15 to 20 million Pakistani rupees, and that's a big deal. That is a big deal back home. It is. Yeah.
I have a question for Professor Jalal. My name is Deepthi Mechavan, and I run the India program at Boston University. So I consider Manto as a feminist writer. Would you care to comment?
Well, I don't think Manto was someone who disliked any kind of categorization. So I would first of all say that I would hesitate, but he was sympathetic to the female. As Shahid Nadeem has done, the protagonist, his Hamzad, is a female, and I think that's a good cinematic addition. But in terms of, there are people, by the way, who feel that Manto is not sympathetic enough. But the point point is that he is in a particular context. I think that the kinds of stories he's written in which he has brought out the female protagonist, and my favorite in this regard is the one that you chose, Hattak, Sogandhi's character. I think the empathy with her, his ability to empathize, is extraordinary. So I think in that sense he was, I mean, and you know, I have written a lot about how his sensibility, if I may call it, was formed so much by three women in his life, his mother most importantly, his sister who's not in the film, and of course his wonderful wife. These women did sort of help him. I mean, he learned the stories of women that he might otherwise have missed out on. So I think we need to realize that women mattered in his life. Not to mention his three daughters, but sadly he went too early. But the three women that did shape his life were his mother, his sister, and his wife.
Yeah, that's what I meant by.
Yes, that's what yes. So he's a very sympathetic sort of, but I do think that these women have helped him engage with women in a way that he may not have had an opportunity to, given the fact of the context he lives in. So I do think that these women were special.
And with the character descriptions also, if I may add to that, you know, they're so prolific and they're so like in-depth and detailed. So I think that empathy takes over more. You know, his empathy definitely stands out more, where he really does not take gender that seriously, you know. He does not. He's really looking at them as characters. In a lot of instances, you know, for me, Ishar and Kalwant are hardly about their genders, you know, where the roles are completely reversed. In Tanda Gosht, you know, the roles are completely reversed. And that really, you know, I think opens another world of characterization to people who will read him today also. You know, that's why, again, in terms of relevance, you know, Manto still, I mean, he belonged to, say, at an instance to the progressives, and then he said, you know, I do not want to be a part of them. He wasn't a leftist entirely, and then he said, so he did not agree to any labels that were, so I don't know if he would have agreed with being a feminist.
No, just in the sense that he speaks from.
He does.
He's
He
very
does.
sensitive to the.
He does.
to the
He
woman's
certainly
point
does.
of
And
view.
I don't know.
And not too many,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
male writers.
yeah. And in some stories, yes, I think the sympathy factor does shine bright, but I think empathy is something that kind of really is quite singular to his construction of characters. So that empathy is quite, you know, remarkable, and I think that also kind of inspires a lot of people who want to, you know, really take another approach to characterization.
The next question's right here.
Where? So whoever has the mic has the power, right?
That is me.
Oh!
My name is Salman Malik. I thought it was a brilliant movie, and I
Thank you,
loved
Salman.
your acting.
Thank you.
I discovered something new today. I've always felt myself living in a cultural vacuum as a Pakistani American, because you know I've been here for over 40 years. Not knowing much about whether it's Manto, Iqbal, Jinnah, Fez.
That's quite a mixed bag, by the way. Let me tell you.
And I know nothing about them. I think it's important with what you've done and what the university has been doing. I think just for myself and more importantly for our kids who are born here, who are going to be growing up here, they need to know something about their heritage, their culture. And I think the Pakistani film industry, which is not Bollywood, which is Pakistani film industry, it's important that it thrives. It's important that we support it. It's not a question, it's more of a comment, and I just wanted to thank you for doing this. I wish there were more and more movies such as this and more events such as this so that we can bring our families together and see these events together. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for looking at it that way. Thank you. Hi.
I have a slightly different question.
Okay. Haven't we had quite a lot of diversity already?
I'm a postdoc at Harvard.
Right.
So I might be mistaken, but I thought I saw a few glimpses of Charlie Chaplin-esque moments in those black and white scenes.
Yes, you did. You did.
Did you, so I know it seems like there are lots of parallels between Charlie Chaplin's own personal life and Manto's. So did you sort of consciously
No.
do this, or
No. It's not any balance. No. No, I don't know. That would be quite an obtuse, observation, I must say. No, it was basically, if you look at the short stories. Now, what I did try to do with my interpretation of stories was that also, whenever we have translated Manto on screen, there's been a very kind of, if I may say so, without being completely judgmental, it's been quite a singular-minded read monotony, please. So that's how he's interpreted in a completely kind of standardized way, where the theatrics are retained, but also at the same time, the vein has been quite similar, whether he's interpreted for theater mostly, or at least the ones that I've seen, or film or television. And I didn't think that a lot of his writings do kind of they invoke another kind of thing in you. And for example, with this story, Peshawar se Lahore Tak, I think there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor going on, And then when you read something like, say for example, let me tell you, Shaheed Saaz, I think there's a lot of black comedy happening there, almost bordering on absurdity sometimes. So I think, that ways I really wanted to have my interpretation of how he is feeling to me to stand out, and that's why Thanda Gosht is done with another technique, that real like slow mode version of reality, to say something like, which is Charlie Chaplin-esque, but only in the cinematic language. But that does not really mean that I am drawing any comparisons between the two great people. I'm a fan of Charlie Chaplin too.
Yeah, I have a question.
Whoever has the mic, darling, yes, yeah.
I talked to someone before. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Akila Kapadia Aspa. From California. I don't live here. And I have a little piece of this movie, because his home was filmed in my home in Karachi.
Yes. The Manto house was created in Karachi, and that was the residence of Mr. Latif Kapadia, late father, the very talented Latif Kapadia Sahab. Yeah.
He was my father, and as I said about my father, he was born 100 years before his time. He was very much like Manto. His thinking was very liberal. And I left Pakistan about 40 years ago. And at that time, I felt it was not that extreme as it is now. That's why I was very impressed and shocked to see this movie and bringing all the characters alive. And my question is Pakistan really that extreme as we hear the news?
Yes. I'm going back on the 24th. Yeah, why don't you come along? No, of course, a representation, again, is a representation, and a lot of representations are misleading, I must say. But I really think that it's still a glass half full.
No, because when I was growing up in the 60s and the 70s, it wasn't this bad.
I've been told the 60s were better.
Yes.
Huh? Yeah. 80s and 90s were the bleakest.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, when Dr. Jalal said that what Manto does is that he very unapologetically teaches you, or at least addresses the idea of questioning.
Yes.
So I think at least I am a generation which went to school in the 80s, and we were deprived of that right. We were taught how not to question. Yeah. So now we do question. Now kids have Facebook, if nothing else. They go there and question stuff and write their opinions on it also. Would that be the last question?
Maybe two more?
Two more? All right.
अस्सलामुअलैकुम खुसर साहब आपका यहाँ आने का मैं बहुत शुक्रगुजार हूँ
जनाब
आपकी फिल्म बहुत ज़बरदस्त थी सारी फिल्म मुझे बहुत पसंद आई मेरा नाम निशान हाशमी है मैं हार्वर्ड लॉ स्कूल में पढ़ता हूँ मैं खास तौर पर जो आपने कुदरतुल्लाह शहाब और मंटो का टकराव का आपने वो मुजाहरा किया तो बहुत ज़बरदस्त वो मतलब अलामती तौर पर बहुत ही आपने ज़बरदस्त किस्म का उसका मुजाहरा किया उसमें ये कहना
शुक्रिया Yes. Okay.
Hello. I am Usman.
Hi, Usman. I can't see you.
Yes.
Hi, Usman. Okay. Yeah.
I am Usman. I am a visiting researcher.
Right.
Visiting researcher in Harvard.
Right.
There was an episode in the film,
Right.
which represented the disappearance of madness or impotence, which was rendered, associated with the woman's extreme love, jealousy, and passion.
Right.
And it's prolonged for the quarter of the film, almost. And you know what I realized?
Right.
I suspected my own masculinity, afterwards. Well.
Well, I think that's not a question really, but thank you for that. No. Again, that was, to be honest, in the film's context, that's just how I think one of the... Yes.
What's your interpretation of what was the extension? Prolonged, so long, because it was, associated with a real life incident in Manto's life as well as the Khindagush.
Again, you see, no, I won't really want to just conclude it or it's not as simple as that only. It does represent a point of view that most of the times, that's what's been alleged against him, and there is, unfortunately, there was a very funny line which I could not incorporate in the film when Manto actually replies back and says, "मैं कहानियाँ लिखता हूँ, कुश्ते नहीं बनाता." So I don't know why do I feel like saying that right now. And it's not about so you see, it just kind of it's very complex and multi-layered. That of course, I read Thanda Gosht when I was very young for all the wrong reasons, and that's what I meant. I love the fact that in my own language, the language that I speak, and the maid who comes to clean the house, she speaks. There is something really graphic and interesting in that. And then to actually feeling that stab and to really feel that dagger that Kalwant uses to slit Isha. So I'm just saying it's a journey with Manto. And I think it's also very legitimate that it's literature. It's accessible to everyone, whatever level they want to interpret it on.
In fact, at the same time, a novel was being written.
Yeah. And Upar Niche Darmyan, by the way, is one of the most fantastic pieces of writing. It's not entirely a short story. It also reads like a one-act play on so many levels, but it is a great mock on whatever he's talking about, the whole aristocratic thing that's happening, and then a reference to Lady Chatterley's lover and whatnot,
You need to control
And, okay, this is the last question.
I have a very short question for Professor Jalal. I was wondering, to what extent do you think filmmakers at the general level should be true to the historical narrative?
No, they don't have to be. My only point here was that Manto is a historical figure, and since this was being billed as a biopic, I asked him about the disclaimer, where he says it's a work of fiction. So I need to know, in order for me to ask any question, whether this is meant to be a work of fiction or whether it's a biopic. Right. That was my question.
And I
just had a very, very quick question. And one is that I really love the fact that you got, of course, money as stories.
That was just I know. Right. Right. No, when I cast him, I actually told him, Menika sir, only if I was 20 years earlier with this, so it would have been you. But that was just one of my, the kicks that I got out of, casting someone who's played Manto as the nemesis in my film.
Thank you so much.